Corrupt cops celebrate in court, but freeze when she reveals she's the FBI director. The Riverside County Courthouse buzzed with the usual Monday morning activity, attorneys hurrying through security clerks, shuffling papers, and defendants waiting nervously on hard wooden benches. In courtroom 7, Judge Harold Winters glanced impatiently at his watch. The 9 a.m. docket was already running behind. At the defendant's table sat Dr. Alicia Monroe, her posture perfect despite the circumstances. At 42, she commanded attention without effort, her tailored navy suit complementing her deep brown skin, her natural hair styled in a sophisticated updo. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she was facing serious criminal charges. As a tenured professor of criminal justice at Georgetown University, Dr. Monroe had built her career analyzing the very system that now held her in its grip. Her research on police accountability had earned her both academic accolades and powerful enemies. Born to a single mother in South Chicago, Alicia had fought through an education system that underestimated her at every turn. Her mother, a public defender who died when Alicia was in college, had instilled in her an unwavering belief in justice. What few people knew was that Dr. Monroe's academic career was only one facet of her professional life. For the past 3 years, she had been serving as the director of the FBI's Civil Rights Division, a fact carefully omitted from her public biography for security reasons. Now, she faced charges of drug possession and resisting arrest allegations that had shocked her colleagues when news broke of her detention 2 days earlier. The arresting officers, Detectives James Harker and Michael Sullivan of the Riverside Police Department's Narcotics Division, sat confidently at the prosecutor's table. Their relaxed postures and occasional smirks suggested they believed this case was already won. What they didn't know was that their target had been watching them long before they ever noticed her. 3 months earlier, Alicia had received a troubling call from Marcus Washington, a former student now working as a public defender in Riverside County. "Dr. Monroe, I have 5 clients, all minorities, all arrested by the same 2 detectives, all with nearly identical circumstances. The evidence feels planted, the testimonies rehearsed. I've filed complaints, requested body cam footage, nothing. It's like they're untouchable." The pattern was clear: traffic stops for minor infractions, aggressive searches despite minimal probable cause, miraculous discoveries of drugs in locations already searched once, and body cameras that conveniently malfunctioned at critical moments. The last client was Teresa Mendoza, nurse, no record. They claimed they found cocaine in her glove compartment. She took a plea deal because she couldn't risk losing custody of her kids with a trial. The data Marcus provided painted a disturbing picture. Detectives Harker and Sullivan had arrest rates 3 times higher than their peers, with 87% of their drug arrests involving minorities. Their cases had a 92% plea rate. Most tellingly, Internal Affairs had dismissed 6 complaints against them in the past year alone. Alicia made a decision that would change everything. She contacted her deputy director at the FBI Special Agent Carlos Reyes and initiated an official federal investigation. "We need someone undercover," Alicia told him. "Someone who fits their victim profile but can handle themselves." "You're thinking of doing this yourself," Carlos realized. Alicia nodded. "I'm the perfect candidate. I can position myself as a visiting lecturer at Riverside Community College establish a presence that will catch their attention. The plan took shape over the following weeks. Alicia arranged a visiting professorship, rented a luxury apartment in an upscale neighborhood where she would stand out, and drove a Mercedes with DC plates, all details designed to draw attention. Meanwhile, FBI agents established surveillance on the detectives, documenting their movements and building profiles of their behavior. Technical specialists installed hidden cameras and microphones in Alicia's car and on her person, ensuring that every interaction would be recorded. For 6 weeks, Alicia lived her cover identity, teaching classes and establishing routines. She frequented a coffee shop near the police station, drove past known surveillance points, and made herself visible in the community. The trap was finally sprung on a Tuesday evening as Alicia drove home from campus. The flashing lights appeared in a rearview mirror at a secluded stretch of road with no witnesses. As she pulled over, Alicia activated the recording devices with a subtle tap on her watch. License and registration. Detective Harker demanded hand resting on his holstered weapon. "Of course, officer. May I ask why I've been stopped?" "You were doing 43 and a 35, Harker said dismissively. "Where are you coming from?" "The community college. I'm a visiting professor." Something flickered in Harker's eyes, interest or calculation. "Washington, D.C., huh? Long way from home." "Step out of the vehicle," Harker suddenly ordered. "May I ask why I don't believe that's necessary for a speeding violation?" "I smell marijuana coming from the vehicle," Harker stated flatly, though no such odor existed. "That gives me probable cause to search." What followed was textbook police misconduct. The detectives separated Alicia from her vehicle, conducted an aggressive search, and discovered a small bag of cocaine in the center console, a location they had already searched once. Their body cameras were conveniently off during this miraculous discovery. Well, what do we have here?" Sullivan said, holding up the bag with theatrical surprise. "That's not mine," Alicia stated calmly. "And I believe it wasn't there when you first searched that compartment. Are you accusing us of planting evidence?" Harker stepped closer, intimidation radiating from his posture. "I'm simply stating a fact," Alicia replied, her voice steady. "Hands behind your back," Sullivan ordered, producing handcuffs. "You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance." The news of Dr. Alicia Monroe's arrest spread quickly. By morning, it had reached Marcus Washington, who immediately recognized the pattern. He contacted Alicia's prearranged attorney, David Keller, who appeared at her arraignment. "Everything was recorded," Keller informed her privately. "The technical team has already retrieved the footage. It's damning clear evidence of misconduct." At the arraignment, Alicia pleaded not guilty, and Keller requested her immediate release on her own recognizance. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Melissa Chen, argued for bail, portraying Alicia as a flight risk due to her D.C. residence. Judge Winters set bail at $10,000, which Alicia posted immediately. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. "Dr. Monroe, do you have a statement about the allegations?" a reporter called out. "I am completely innocent of these charges, which will be proven in court. Beyond that, I believe this case represents a pattern of behavior that deserves close scrutiny." Back at her apartment, Alicia debriefed with Carlos. "They followed the pattern exactly. Manufactured probable cause, planted evidence, the works." "We need more," Carlos replied. "If this is just about two corrupt cops, It's a local matter. We need to establish a pattern of civil rights violations or evidence that the corruption extends beyond these two. Over the next 2 weeks, the FBI investigation expanded. Financial records showed both detectives living beyond their means. Sullivan had recently purchased a boat, while Harker was building a vacation home. Neither expenditure aligned with their salaries. More significantly, analysis of the cocaine found in Alicia's car revealed it came from the same source as evidence in 3 other cases. Harker and Sullivan had handled cases where defendants had taken plea deals. The day before the preliminary hearing, ADA Chen approached Keller with a plea offer. Your client pleads to a misdemeanor possession charge, gets probation, no jail time. Decline it, Alicia instructed. We're going forward. The preliminary hearing began with Ada Chen presenting the state's case, portraying Alicia as an entitled academic who thought herself above the law. The evidence will show that the defendant was in possession of cocaine and that detectives Harker and Sullivan discovered this substance during a lawful search. When Keller rose for the defense, his strategy was unexpected. Rather than challenging the evidence directly, he focused on establishing the detectives' patterns of behavior. Your Honor, I'd like to establish relevant background regarding the arresting officers. I've submitted a motion to introduce evidence of prior similar incidents. Judge Winters, known for his by-the-book approach, allowed limited exploration of the officers' prior conduct. As Harker took the stand, Keller methodically walked him through the arrest, highlighting inconsistencies. Then he shifted focus. Detective Harker, in the past 3 years, how many of your drug arrests have involved Black or Latino suspects? I don't keep track of that, Harker replied defensively. Would it surprise you to learn that 87% of your drug arrests involve minorities, despite Riverside's population being only 32% minority? Keller then produced a bombshell surveillance footage from a gas station across from where Alicia had been pulled over. The video showed Sullivan returning to their police vehicle and retrieving something from the trunk shortly before the cocaine was discovered. Can you explain why your partner needed to return to your vehicle during the search? Detective Harker. Harker's face flushed. I don't recall that happening. Judge Winters called for a recess. As the courtroom emptied, Alicia noticed Harker and Sullivan in heated conversation with Ada Chen, who looked increasingly alarmed. When court resumed, Chen made an unexpected announcement. Your Honor, in light of new information, the state requests a continuance to review evidence that may be exculpatory. What new information? Counselor Judge Winters asked sharply. Information regarding the chain of custody of the evidence in question, Your Honor. As the attorneys conferred with the judge, Alicia observed Harker and Sullivan exchanging nervous glances. They sensed the case unraveling, but didn't yet understand how completely they had been outmaneuvered. When the bench conference ended, Judge Winters addressed the courtroom. This hearing will resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. In the meantime, I'm ordering all evidence in this case to be secured by the court clerk. Outside the courtroom, Keller briefed Alicia. They're scrambling. Chen knows something's wrong with their case, but she doesn't know the half of it yet. It's time, Alicia decided. Contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. Tell them to be ready to move at tomorrow's hearing. That evening, FBI agents executed search warrants on the detectives' homes and bank accounts. What they found exceeded even Alicia's expectations. $175,000 in cash hidden in Harker's garage, detailed records of payments from local drug dealers in Sullivan's home office, and evidence linking them to at least 12 cases of planted evidence. Most damning was a text message exchange between the detectives after Alicia's arrest. "Got the professor. She'll take a deal like all the others. Nice work. Vacation fund gets another boost." By morning, the U.S. Attorney's Office had prepared federal indictments against both detectives for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and corruption. When court reconvened, the atmosphere was electric. News of unusual FBI activity around the courthouse had leaked to the local press, and the gallery was packed with reporters. Harker and Sullivan entered, looking confident they still believed they controlled the narrative. Judge Winters called the court to order. "Ms. Chen, is the state prepared to proceed?" Before Chen could answer, Keller rose. "Your Honor, before we continue, there's a matter that needs to be addressed. My client would like to make a statement to the court." "This is highly irregular, Mr. Keller." The judge frowned. "I understand, Your Honor, but I believe it will clarify matters considerably." After a moment's consideration, Judge Winters nodded. "Very well. Dr. Monroe, you may address the court." Alicia rose, her movements deliberate and composed. She reached into her briefcase and removed a leather credential wallet. "Your Honor, my name is Dr. Alicia Monroe, and I am the director of the FBI's Civil Rights Division." She opened the wallet, revealing her FBI credentials and badge. "For the past 3 months, I have been leading an undercover federal investigation into a pattern of civil rights violations and corruption within the Riverside Police Department." The courtroom erupted. Harker half rose from his seat, his face draining of color. Sullivan froze, his expression shifting from confusion to horror as the implications sank in. "Order!" Judge Winters banged his gavel repeatedly. "I will have order in this court." When the room quieted, Alicia continued. "With the court's permission, I would like to introduce Special Agent Carlos Reyes, Deputy Director of the Civil Rights Division, and U.S. Attorney Eleanor Phillips, who has prepared federal indictments against Detectives Harker and Sullivan." As if on cue, Carlos entered from the back of the courtroom, accompanied by a distinguished woman in a charcoal suit and 4 FBI agents in tactical gear. "Your Honor," U.S. Attorney Phillips addressed the court, "we have federal warrants for the immediate arrest of James Harker and Michael Sullivan on multiple charges, including deprivation of civil rights under color of law, conspiracy evidence, tampering, and extortion." Judge Winters, visibly stunned, took a moment to process the dramatic turn of events. "I see. This court will temporarily recess while these federal matters are addressed." As FBI agents moved to take the detectives into custody, Sullivan lunged toward Alicia. "You bitch, you set us up." He never reached her. Carlos intercepted him with practiced efficiency, pinning him against the prosecutor's table. "That's another charge threatening a federal officer. You're really not helping your case." Harker, meanwhile, had collapsed back into his chair, all bravado evaporated. "This can't be happening," he muttered as agents handcuffed him. "We were careful. We were always so careful." "Not careful enough," Alicia replied, her voice carrying in the now silent courtroom. "You made a fundamental mistake, Detective Harker. You assumed that because I was black and female, I was powerless. That arrogance is what brought you down." As the detectives were led away, Ada Chen approached Alicia, her expression a mixture of shock and embarrassment. "Director Monroe, I had no idea. If I had known about their misconduct, that's the problem, Ms. Chen. Alicia interrupted gently. Too many people in the system don't look closely enough when the victims fit a certain profile. That's what needs to change. The aftermath was swift and far-reaching. By evening, the story had made national news. FBI director goes undercover to expose corrupt cops. The footage from Alicia's hidden cameras, released as part of the federal complaint, provided irrefutable evidence of police misconduct. The investigation expanded beyond Harker and Sullivan. 3 more officers were implicated in the corruption scheme, and the Riverside police chief resigned amid questions about his failure to address previous complaints. Most significantly, the U.S. Attorney's Office began reviewing every case Harker and Sullivan had handled over the past 5 years, more than 300 convictions, most secured through plea deals. Within weeks, 17 people were released from prison, their convictions vacated due to tainted evidence. 1 month after the dramatic courtroom revelation, Alicia stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a press conference. "What happened in Riverside isn't unique," she stated firmly. "Across this country, there are officers who abuse their authority, targeting vulnerable communities with impunity. But there are also thousands of ethical officers who serve with honor. Our goal isn't to undermine law enforcement, but to ensure it works fairly for everyone." She announced a new Justice Department initiative to provide resources for local police oversight and accountability measures. True justice requires vigilance not just from federal agencies, but from every participant in the system. Later that evening, Alicia received a call from Marcus Washington. "I just left Teresa Mendoza's house," he told her, his voice thick with emotion. "Her conviction was officially vacated today. She can return to nursing, now rebuild her life. She asked me to thank you." "I was just doing my job," Alicia replied. "No," Marcus said firmly. "You did what no one else was willing to do. You put yourself at risk to expose the truth." After the call, Alicia stood at her office window, looking out at the Washington Monument, illuminated against the night sky. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind: congressional hearings, media interviews, meetings with police reform advocates. Her undercover operation had sparked a national conversation about accountability in law enforcement. The final tally of the Riverside investigation was staggering: 5 officers indicted, 32 convictions overturned, and a complete restructuring of the department's internal affairs division. The police chief had resigned in disgrace when evidence emerged that he had ignored multiple complaints about Harker and Sullivan in exchange for improved arrest statistics. Most satisfying for Alicia was the establishment of a civilian oversight board with real authority, including subpoena power and the ability to review body camera footage. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a meaningful step toward the accountability she had championed throughout her career. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "Turn on CNN. They're covering the Sullivan sentencing." Alicia switched on the office television just in time to see Detective Sullivan being led from the courthouse in handcuffs, his face a mask of defeated rage. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Former detective sentenced to 12 years for civil rights violations, corruption." The reporter was interviewing Teresa Mendoza, the nurse whose case had first drawn Alicia's attention to Riverside. "I lost my job, My reputation, nearly lost my children, all because these officers decided I was guilty before they even pulled me over. Teresa said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. What Director Monroe did gave me back my life, but more importantly, it showed that the system can work when people in power choose to do what's right. Alicia turned off the television and returned to her desk, where a framed photo of her mother now sat prominently. She could almost hear her mother's voice. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty, it's about protecting the innocent. That protection had been Alicia's mission since childhood, first as an academic exposing systemic flaws, and now as a federal official with the power to enact real change. The Riverside case had been personal for her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Each victim whose conviction was overturned reminded her of the people from her South Chicago neighborhood, good people who had been presumed guilty simply because of who they were or where they lived. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Eleanor Phillips, the U.S. attorney, who had handled the federal prosecution. "I thought you'd want to see this," Eleanor said, handing Alicia a document. "The Attorney General just approved your proposal for a national task force on police accountability. You'll have the resources to replicate what you did in Riverside on a much larger scale." Alicia scanned the document, a sense of validation washing over her. This is exactly what we need: proactive investigations rather than just responding to complaints after the damage is done. "There's something else," Eleanor added with a slight smile. "The White House called. The President wants to recognize your work at next month's State of the Union address." After Eleanor left, Alicia sat quietly reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought of her mother, who had fought so hard within a system that seemed designed to fail people like them. She thought of Marcus Washington continuing that fight in courtrooms where the odds were stacked against his clients. She thought of Teresa Mendoza and the dozens of others whose lives had been derailed by corrupt officers who believed they were untouchable. The system wasn't fixed, far from it, but Alicia had proven that it could be held accountable, that those who abused their power could be brought to justice. More importantly, she had shown that one person willing to take a risk and stand firm in the face of intimidation could create ripples of change that extended far beyond a single courtroom in Riverside. Her phone rang again, a secure line from the FBI field office in Chicago. Another case, another city, another opportunity to ensure that justice wasn't just an ideal, but a reality. Alicia Monroe picked up the phone, ready for the next challenge. "This is Director Monroe," she answered, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced corruption and won. "How can I help?"